Welcome back to the channel. Thanks for joining me on another one. Today I want to talk to you about decoy spreads. If this is your first time here, please consider subscribing. Weekly duck videos, tips, hunts, everything that a duck hunter wants. Now, I myself, like many other hunters, my goal is to put ducks in the decoys. That's what I like. That's what gets me up at 3 o'clock in the morning. I like shooting ducks in tight, floating over the decoys, or actually sitting in them. You know, being from Arkansas, there's an old Arkansas saying that the old hunters used to say that you're not doing it if their feet ain't touching the water. And that pretty much means that you're not really doing it right unless you get the ducks all the way down. So that's always been, you know, a part of my hunting, the people I grew up with hunting. Our goal was to always put them all the way on the water. That's just something special about that, especially big groups of mallards. So in pursuit of that over the years, I've tried a lot of different things, experimented a lot with decoy spreads and different tactics. And today I just want to share with you a few things that I've learned that I think have definitely helped me. Now, the main thing I want you to get out of this video is for you to not get caught up on certain shapes or these diagrams that you see anytime you see people talking about decoy spreads. If you can just learn to understand what you're trying to communicate with your decoys and what you're trying to make the ducks do with your decoys, you won't have to worry about shapes and all that stuff. It'll just come with it. You'll be a lot more effective if you really understand what's behind the shapes. And that's a huge part of understanding how to be more effective at putting ducks in your decoys. Two major functions of your decoys is one, yes, to say, hey, we're ducks, come down here and join us. But two, it's also to direct the ducks. And a lot of times that directing is in the blocking of ducks. There's no absolute rules in duck hunting. If you duck hunt very long, you'll find that ducks break rules all the time. But there are generalities that they typically follow day in and day out. And one of those general rules of thumb is that ducks typically don't want to land over decoys, especially in more wide open big holes. You'll use your decoys to stop the ducks where you want them to stop. On the crosswind and you want the ducks to land in front of you, put your decoys a little upwind to the right. And then it's just about adjustments after that. If the ducks are landing more in the decoys, move the decoys more in front of you. If, you know, especially later in the year, they'll want to land further off the decoys and we'll move the decoys further upwind. And another thing to keep in mind is I don't know the exact percentage of the days that I hunt where I don't touch the decoys, but it's very small. We adjust the decoys almost every single time we hunt. And that's just because the ducks act different every day. The wind changes all the time. You're constantly going to be tweaking and moving your decoy spread. I can't tell you how many times, you know, we'll have ducks working and not wanting to finish. You go out and make a little adjustment in the decoys and it changes everything. So keep in mind, you're going to be tweaking your decoys all the time. Every duck hunter does that. It's a chess game. You make a move and then you're waiting on them to make a move. The first strategy I want to talk to you about is what I use most of the time. It's usually what I start out with. It's not really a certain shape. I fill up part of the hole that I'm hunting with as natural of shape of decoys as possible. And again, don't get stuck on the shape. This shape may change depending on where I'm hunting and the kind of spot I'm hunting, the kind of duck hole I'm hunting. I may use a semi-V, a U shape, but more times than not, I just kind of create a line of decoys and fill out behind that line, kind of just like a blob of decoys. And I try to make that look as natural as possible. You know, there's a mix of trying to get the ducks to do what you want them to do by making, you know, a design in your decoys, but there's also trying to keep it natural as possible and not look just like something thrown out by a hunter. Ducks fly over thousands of decoys. If you look at ducks very much sitting on the water, you'll see that they're very dynamic. They'll be really tightly packed in this spot of the group and be more loosely spread out on this spot. There may be a single that just landed swimming off by himself, and there may be a greenhead and a hen pair 20 yards to the left. And I try to imitate that. You know, I'll lay out my basic design of what I want to do with the decoys, but then I throw one over here by itself and two over here, maybe a couple different species decoys over here. And I just try to make it look as natural as possible, especially the more open it is. Now, when I'm in the timber or in thicker cover, I really don't worry about that as much. So like I said, for most of our hunts, we're just putting out a general shape to fit the hole we're hunting. Like I said, we don't get caught up on U's, J's, all that. Whatever makes the most sense with the shape and style of place that we're hunting. We're really just saying, here's the group of ducks. We want the live ducks to land on the outside edge of them right here. That's pretty much what we're always doing. Now, the second strategy I use a lot is what I call the split group. Now, I don't know what in the psychology of a duck makes them desire this more on some days than just the regular, you know, group of ducks. But I found there's just some days that you'll do a lot better if you go and break up your group of decoys into two groups and basically leave a lane going through the middle of them. For some reason, there's days where ducks just don't want to land, I guess, looking or falling right into the hard line of decoys. Now the key to that is figuring out how far apart you set the groups. Some days we put them not that far apart. Some days we put one group of decoys on one end of the hole and one group on the other, and put a lot of distance in between. And then also figuring out how big each group is. You know, we usually have one core group of more decoys, and then we'll make a smaller group off to the sides. But you just have to play around with that. Try, you know, different styles and different sizes of the groups, different distance in between them. A good example of these two strategies, and sometimes how you have to change, if you go back to one of our previous videos, we're hunting in a place that we had never hunted before, me and Glenn. We were sitting on this tree line that had open water on both sides. Now you could apply this strategy to an island, to a clump of brush, whatever it may be that the ducks may split around the object. This just happened to be a tree line. We were set up on the end of that tree line on the point and had the decoys out in front of us, but the ducks kept trying to split us and go in a V around us, and some would go to our right, some would go to our left and far light us, and we just couldn't get them to do right. So a few hours into the hunt, we made the adjustment. We took the decoys from out in front of us and put them to our sides, split the decoys up, put one group to our left, one group to our right, and every duck after that landed directly in front of us at 15-20 yards, just perfect, exactly what you want. But they did not want to land with them decoys. They wanted to land off of them, and that's why they kept splitting us and going around. Now that we know that, anytime we go back to the spot on the same wind, we know, hey, split the decoys up down these two chutes to stop the ducks and put them in front of us. So some of it just comes from hunting places multiple times and learning what works best, and then you can, you know, copy that in the future and do a lot better. Now the third tactic works really well in late season. Anytime you're hunting around a spot that has cover around it and kind of open in the middle, whether it be cattails, prairie grasses, willows, buckbrush, timber. We just hunt a lot of holes that have an open spot in it, but with cover around it. Later in the year, we seem to do a lot better a lot of the time by taking our decoys out of that open water and putting them in the cover. The idea here is to kind of leave mystery. Ducks just seem to key in and be able to tell the difference between live ducks and decoys the later the season goes. We like to move our decoys back into the timber, back into the cattails, whatever it is, to give them a glance of it as they're passing, but they really can't key in and actually just stare at your decoys for very long. We may leave a few out on the edge with the jerk string just so they can see a little bit better.
Shooting.
I was real skeptical of this first few times I tried it. You know, you think, hey, I need to have my decoys out here to where they can see, but I've seen it make a huge difference, especially if you get the ducks to look a time or two, but they just won't finish and you know your head. Back the decoys off into the cover and just kind of leave that mystery there. You know, they hear your calling, they see your ripples, and they see little glimpses of the decoys, but they can't really say, oh, that's just a piece of plastic sitting there. If you want to learn more about how to find ducks on public land, click this video right here. If you want to see some of my other tip videos, click this playlist down here. Thanks for joining me today. I hope you learned something. I love you, and Lord willing, I'll catch you next time right here on Chasing Green.